First story. I demanded my new husband leave the dinner table at the Christmas party because my daughter doesn't want him there after he accused my daughter of stealing his late father's watch, which she did. But my daughter returned it after he called the cops. The entitled husband refused to leave, so I threw his plate away, canceled his trip with his son, and falsely accused him of abuse. Now everything is ruined. I'll keep this as clear as I can. I 43F have an 18-year-old daughter, Stacy, who recently moved back in with her dad after a major falling out between her and my husband, Rick 46M. For context, Rick and Stacy never really clicked. They tried. He picked her up from school, went to some of her plays, and helped her with maths homework, but it always felt forced on both sides. Stacy wasn't rude to him, but she didn't warm up to him either. I figured it was just teen attitude or her missing her dad. Things turned sharply last year when Rick accused Stacy of stealing and pawning one of his watches. It was a gift from his late father, supposedly worth over $600, and when it went missing, he confronted her directly. She denied it at first, but he involved the police anyway. The whole thing was awful. There were officers in my living room questioning my daughter, and even though nothing came of it legally, the damage was done. Stacy later admitted she had sold the watch. She said it was to help her friend cover rent. And yes, I know that doesn't justify it, but she came clean. She even used money from her college savings from her late grandfather, my dad, to pay Rick back. Rick never acknowledged that. He got his money, but he acted like she was permanently written off. That's when she packed her stuff and went to stay with her dad. Since then, I've kept in contact with her. We meet for lunch sometimes. I go to her school events, and I helped her apply to a study abroad program she got accepted into. She'll be leaving the country soon. I asked her to come spend Christmas Eve with us so we could have dinner together as a family before she left. She was hesitant, which I expected, but agreed on one condition. She didn't want to sit at the table with Rick. At first, I thought I could get them to just stay civil for one night. But Stacy was very clear. It wasn't about being petty. She said being near him made her anxious and uncomfortable. I told Rick about this, thinking he'd at least try to work with me since it meant a lot to me. He didn't like it. He said it was ridiculous to be told where he could or couldn't sit in his own house. I told him I wasn't asking him to leave the house or skip dinner. Just maybe, for one night, eat in the kitchen while we eat in the dining room. I know that sounds cold, but I honestly didn't know what else to do. We don't have two dining tables. If Stacy saw him at the head of the table, she'd probably walk out. I wanted to see her. I wanted us to have one last normal holiday moment before she left. Rick flat out refused. He said it was his house, and he wouldn't be banished to the kitchen like some kind of punishment. I said it wasn't punishment. It was compromise. He kept saying no. I dropped it for a couple of days, hoping he'd cool off. Fast forward to Christmas Eve. My parents, my sister, her husband, and their 2 kids were all over. Stacy showed up, looking really nice. I was happy to see her. But the second she saw Rick sitting at the table, she froze in the hallway. She didn't even take off her coat. She looked at me and said, "I thought you handled this." I tried to get her to come in and sit and told her we'd work it out. But she turned towards Rick and said, "Know your place, arsehole." I won't defend that. It was unnecessary and hostile, but I think it shows just how tense she felt. Rick didn't say anything back to her. He just stayed sitting there with this smug look on his face, like he'd won something. That's when I asked him again, quietly but firmly, to go eat in the kitchen. He said no again. I didn't understand what the problem was. He had his plate, he had his food, and nobody was telling him to eat on the porch or in the garage. It was just one meal, and it wasn't about him. It was about my daughter, who had come to spend her last night at home before leaving the country. I asked him one more time to take his plate and go into the kitchen. He stared at me and didn't move. So I reached over to take his plate myself, figuring I'd just set it on the kitchen table and end the discussion. But he didn't let go. He held the plate tightly, and I kept trying to take it. We weren't yelling or anything, but we were both pulling on it. Then it happened. It slipped and shattered all over the floor. Rick stood up and told me to stop trying to make him the problem. He said, again, "It's my house," and looked around the table like he was expecting someone to back him up. Nobody said anything. My mom quietly started gathering the kids, and my sister whispered something to Stacy, who was already heading for the door. I followed her, trying to get her to stay, but she said, "You chose him again," and walked out. Dinner was basically over at that point. My sister and her family left. My parents did too. Nobody touched their plates. Rick sat back down like nothing happened. I stood in the hallway for a while, then cleaned up the plate myself. We didn't speak the rest of the night. Since then, the house has been cold. Not just emotionally, Rick has barely said 2 full sentences to me, unless it's something basic like the mail or bills. He says I disrespected him in front of his in-laws and humiliated him. That I sided with the thief and treated him like he was disposable. I've told him multiple times this wasn't about choosing between them. It was about giving me one night with my daughter. One night before she leaves the country. He thinks it's deeper than that. And maybe he's right. There's been stuff building under the surface for a while. Little things I brushed off because I didn't want more tension. Like how Rick has never once asked how Stacy's doing since she moved out. He doesn't acknowledge her birthdays or even mention her name, unless he's complaining about what she did. Even before the watch incident, there were arguments. He thought she was disrespectful because she didn't say good morning. She thought he was controlling because he'd comment on what she wore. I used to tell both of them to be more patient, but that never led to anything lasting. Stacy apologized for the watch. She told me she messed up and wished she'd handled it better. She didn't excuse it, and she paid him back every cent. I never expected Rick to forgive and forget, but I didn't think he'd hold it over her like it was permanent. When she said, "Know your place," it was wrong. Yes, but I think it came from seeing that he'd rather prove a point than let her sit down for dinner. He's not a bad man. He works hard, takes care of the house, and always remembers to gas up my car. But when it comes to Stacy, he shuts down. It's like there's no version of her where she's not the girl who betrayed him. He won't budge, won't consider that maybe she's still a kid who made a bad call and tried to fix it. After Christmas, Stacy texted me that she doesn't want to come back. She'll visit her dad during breaks. I asked if she'd reconsider, even just for a weekend, and she told me she doesn't feel like I protect her when it matters. That hit hard. I've done what I could. I've gone to her recitals, stayed on the phone while she cried after moving out, and helped her apply for her passport and student visa. I didn't pick Rick over her, but I also didn't make Rick move out or give up the living room either. Now I'm stuck wondering if I made the whole situation worse. If I'd told her not to come, would that have been kinder? If I'd told Rick to suck it up more forcefully, would the night have gone differently? He still insists that he didn't do anything wrong. We haven't talked about it since. We eat in silence. He makes comments about people playing favorites and disrespecting him. I ignore it. Stacy leaves in 2 weeks. She says she doesn't want a goodbye dinner. I think she means it. So, I'm stuck. I feel like I tried to keep things calm, tried to make the night work for everyone, and failed. Rick won't move an inch. Stacy's done. And I'm standing in the middle trying to figure out if asking for this one small thing, just a change in where someone ate dinner, makes me the arsehole. Ada? Comments. Comment 1. Wait, let me get this straight, because the way you're framing it feels slippery. Your daughter stole his watch. Police showed up. She paid him back. That's not some misunderstanding. That's not, allegedly. That's getting caught and trying to undo the damage after the fact. And somehow, in your mind, he's the one who needed to be accommodating. You expected him to sit alone in the kitchen on Christmas, while everyone else ate like normal, all because the person who stole from him feels weird sitting near him. Of course she feels weird. That feeling is called shame. You say she had her reasons. Sorry, that's garbage. Everyone who steals has reasons. Rent, friends, desperation, impulse. Reasons don't turn theft into a character quirk. And the fact that you still frame this as him accusing her instead of her doing it tells me exactly why he's so dug in. You didn't ask for a small favor. You asked him to accept being sidelined in his own home while your daughter set the terms. I don't care if she's leaving the country or not. 18 years old doesn't mean she gets to dictate Christmas seating after burning that bridge. YTA. Comment 2. I feel like people are glossing over something huge here. Your husband didn't refuse to compromise. He refused to be treated like the problem when he wasn't. You didn't ask Stacy to keep things civil. You didn't correct her when she called him an arsehole. You didn't stop her from walking in already hostile. You just pivoted straight to moving him. You're shocked he stayed put. He already lost a watch tied to his dead father, had cops in his house, and never got a sincere apology by the sound of it. Now he's supposed to eat alone, while the person who robbed him sits comfortably with the family. You keep saying this was your last Christmas with her, like that overrides everything else. It doesn't. If she was serious about rebuilding anything, she wouldn't have walked in swinging. And if you wanted this dinner to work, you should have addressed her tone immediately instead of letting it slide and turning on your husband instead. He was generous just letting her walk back through the front door. You backed the wrong person in the moment that mattered most. YTA. Comment 3. Okay, look. I get your side. But I also get why Rick's pissed off. I've been the stepdad in a house where the kid resents me. It wears you down. You're constantly walking on eggshells. And then one day, you're told you're not welcome at your own damn table on Christmas Eve. That doesn't feel like a favor. That feels like the last straw. You didn't even back him when she called him an arsehole in front of everyone. No one said anything. Imagine sitting there while people pretend like your presence is the problem. It's demeaning. And maybe he should have just gone to the kitchen for peace. But the man was asked to give up dignity in front of your whole family and pretend that it's reasonable. That stings. What Stacy did last year was theft. Call it what it is. If that had been his child stealing your jewelry, would you be cool seeing him back at the table like nothing happened? Rick might be acting cold now, but you helped turn the heat off. Update. Things didn't settle down after Christmas. They went the opposite direction. I'm writing this because a lot of people in the comments made assumptions about me and my daughter that don't line up with reality. And because the situation has continued to change in ways I didn't plan but also didn't stop. First, some clarifications for the people calling me unhinged or saying I'm being manipulated by an 18-year-old. Stacy isn't running my life. She doesn't live here. She isn't asking for money, housing, or favors. She's leaving the country on her own merits and has a place with her father when she's in the U.S. What she asked for was space from a man who involved police in a family conflict and never tried to repair anything afterwards. If you think that's unreasonable, we live in different worlds. After Christmas, Rick acted like nothing happened, except for me disrespecting him. No acknowledgement of the fact that the dinner blew up. No comment about my daughter leaving in tears. No reflection on the plate breaking or why everyone walked out. Just cold silence and passive comments about principles and his house. That was when I stopped cooking for him. Not as a stunt. I just didn't feel right playing wife when I felt like a guest in my own marriage. About a week later, I told him directly what I needed if there was any chance of moving forward. I asked him to apologize to Stacy. Not a vague, sorry things went bad, but an apology that acknowledged his role in making her feel unwelcome. I also told him that if he actually wanted her to ever come back to this house, he needed to invite her himself and serve her dinner the same way he serves guests he respects. He laughed at that and asked if I was serious. I was. He refused. He said he wouldn't beg an adult who stole from him. Said I was asking him to humiliate himself. But he's already humiliated our family by freezing out a teenager permanently over something she paid for and admitted. We hit a wall there. A few days after that, he invited his son mid-20s to stay with us for a week. Didn't ask me. Told me after the plans were made. I took that as him planting his own flag in the house, making it clear that my feelings and my daughter's comfort weren't even part of the equation anymore. His son has never liked me. He makes comments about soft parenting and kids today needing consequences. Having him here felt deliberate. Around this time, Rick also mentioned using his work bonus to take a short trip with his son. No conversation about timing, money, or whether this was the right moment. Just an announcement. That was when I quietly separated my finances. I opened my own account and moved my portion of savings into it. I didn't hide it. I just didn't ask permission. Some people will call that sneaky. I call it self-preservation. We fought more after that. He accused me of trying to turn the house into Stacy's territory. I told him he already turned it into hostile ground long before Christmas. That was when I said something I know bothered a lot of commenters when I mentioned it earlier. I told him Stacy will always come first. I didn't say it to be cruel. I said it because it's the truth, and pretending otherwise hasn't helped anyone. Another thing people latched onto was the idea that I'm making up accusations. I need to be very clear here. I did tell Rick that if he kept pushing this narrative that Stacy is some irredeemable screw-up, I would stop protecting his image with my family. I believe, genuinely, that some of the ways he treated her when she was younger were wrong. Constant suspicion, passive remarks, keeping score. No, he didn't hit her. No, there was nothing criminal. But I believe emotional damage still counts, even if the internet loves to minimize it. I told him I didn't want to go down that road if he could just listen for once. He took that as a threat. I took it as honesty. At one point, during another argument, I recorded part of our conversation. I'll own that. I wasn't trying to catch him saying anything dramatic. I wanted to hear later whether I was really as dismissive and unfair as he keeps saying. When he found out, he was furious. Said I'd crossed another line. I told him trust had already been eroded long before I pressed record. A few days before Stacy left. She told me she didn't want a goodbye dinner. I went to see her alone instead. Rick didn't ask where I was going. When I told him later that she said she didn't understand why I stayed married to him after the watch incident, he said, "Good. She doesn't have to understand. I don't care if my marriage ends anymore." That realization didn't come with drama or tears. It came quietly, sitting on the couch while he and his son watched TV and talked about plans that didn't include me. I'm tired of being told that loyalty to my child is some kind of moral failure. I'm tired of people online pretending an apology is weakness, and that mothers are supposed to emotionally abandon their kids the moment they turn 18. To the commenters who keep repeating, "She stole from him," yes, she did. She admitted it. She paid for it. She lost her home over it. If your version of justice requires lifelong exile and public shaming, that's your issue, not mine. I'm not asking for validation anymore. I'm asking if anyone sees a way forward that doesn't involve me shrinking myself, silencing my daughter, and pretending this is just about a seat at a table. Because from where I'm standing, the damage was done long before Christmas, and I'm done absorbing it quietly. Comments. Comment 1. You're acting like you've got the moral high ground because you've decided loyalty to your kid means steamrolling anyone who doesn't fall in line. You're not defending a child anymore, you're defending an adult who committed theft, told someone to know their place, and still expects you to be her cleanup crew when things get uncomfortable. She doesn't live there. She's not your co-parent. She's your kid, yeah. But that doesn't mean everyone else in your life becomes disposable. You didn't just stop cooking. You gave him conditions, apologized, serve her, beg her to return, and when he didn't, you cut him off and pushed your own narrative. You even started laying the groundwork to torch his reputation with your family. He might be emotionally unavailable or resentful, fine. Fair to call that out, but your version of fixing this was making him a second-class citizen in his home. No one wins here, but don't rewrite it like you're the only one in pain. Comment 2. You seriously think you're coming out of this looking like the rational one? You've told on yourself in every paragraph. You want your husband to beg for forgiveness and serve your daughter a damn meal like she's royalty. And you've spun up this narrative that she's a victim because she felt anxious after being caught stealing and telling him to know his place. Your logic is so warped you're making up trauma to justify emotional blackmail. And now you're playing house dictator, cut off the food, split the money, start recording him, and isolate him from your family. You've already decided this marriage is over. You're just trying to burn it down with enough dramatics so no one can blame you when it crashes. I hope he sees this for what it is and walks before you drag him through court with your twisted version of events. And when it's time to divide assets and custody of whatever is left of this life, don't be shocked if the courts don't buy the "but she's my daughter" excuse for psychological warfare. You've turned vindictive, and it's all in writing now. Comment 3. You're playing a nasty game and acting like it's motherhood. You didn't just defend your daughter, you made up accusations you admitted were kind of true in your head and dangled them over your husband like blackmail. That's disgusting. You don't throw out emotional abuse claims just to get someone to cave. That's the kind of SHT people lose careers and custody over. And the way you talk about his son. You've always hated that kid, and now you're acting like him showing up is some kind of power play. Maybe Rick brought him around because you made it crystal clear your daughter can insult him and still be treated like royalty. So why the hell shouldn't he bring his own kid around? You're not trying to fix anything. You want a divorce without saying it, so you can still feel like the wronged one. I hope Rick figures it out and lets you burn this bridge on your own. But don't be surprised when the judge isn't swayed by your emotional diary and starts asking why you emptied the accounts, weaponized recordings, and tried to rebrand theft as a bonding moment. Update. Right after my last post, I mailed Stacy a new house key. Mailed it with a note that said, "You'll always have a home here." I didn't tell Rick. I didn't care to. She wasn't moving back, but I needed her to know that no matter what anyone else says, I won't shut her out. That was never an option for me. Then everything collapsed at once. After months of silence, Rick filed for divorce behind my back. I found out from his lawyer when I got a letter asking me to respond. He didn't talk to me about it. He'd already started sorting accounts, listing assets, and even collecting character references. Some of those references were people I considered friends. He told them I was emotionally unstable, manipulated the home, cut him off financially, and used our daughter's theft to justify mistreating him. He never mentioned that he refused to apologize for what he did, or that he brought his son over like a damn intruder in my house to prove a point. I couldn't afford a good lawyer. I used the last of my savings to retain someone cheap and aggressive. She advised me to start documenting everything, so I did. I started writing entries about how Rick treated Stacy in the past, how he picked at her clothes, watched her every move, and treated her like a suspect long before the watch incident. I called out how cold he was and how he made her feel unsafe. I didn't invent anything, but I shaped it hard. I wanted a file that told the truth my way. In the middle of this, I walked into the kitchen and caught Rick recording me during an argument. I'd raised my voice, yeah. I was pissed, tired, and cornered. But the phone was propped up on the counter, just watching. He said it was for his safety. That's when I knew he'd been planning this longer than I thought. I was the only one still trying to fix something that was already gone. Then came his son. We fought. I was tired of the smug glances and the snide comments about how I'd ruined his father. I told him he wasn't welcome here anymore. He told me he'd make sure Rick never gave me a cent more than what I deserved. I told him to get out. Rick came in and sided with him. But it didn't stop there. Around the same time, I accessed our joint investment account and found money missing. Not just a little, almost a third of it. Moved out before the divorce papers were filed. My lawyer said he'd probably claim it as preparation or separate property if he had documentation, which I'm sure he did. He played me. I thought I was the only one being tactical. Turns out I was just reacting to a game he'd already mapped out. Then, out of nowhere, Stacy got arrested for shoplifting. I got a call in the middle of the night. I thought it was a mistake. It wasn't. She'd taken clothes, makeup, and some other stuff from a department store with a friend, got caught, and tried to bluff her way out. Security called the police. She was charged. And then X called me. He said, "She keeps making bad choices because you keep protecting her from the fallout. I won't do it again. You need to figure this out." And hung up. I begged him not to abandon her right before her study abroad. He said she was lucky this happened here and not in another country. That if she wanted to leave the country on a student visa, this charge could wreck it. He's not wrong, but I'm the only one trying to fix it. So I went to Rick. I asked him to help me post her bail, help talk to a lawyer, anything. He looked at me like I was out of my mind. Told me, "You made your choices. You raised her how you wanted. Now you deal with it," and walked away. No one in my family would help either. They'd already pulled away. After Stacy had a blow-up with my mother and sister telling them to stop talking about my life like it's your gossip, they cut her off. Said she was disrespectful and entitled. I defended her. Told them they never liked her independence. That was the last time we spoke. They blocked me a few days later. I have no one left. Then came court. Divorce hearings started, and the way Rick's lawyer painted me, it was like watching someone rip my face off and put on a mask with my name on it. He came off calm, patient, and generous. He even had written logs of incidents at home. Said I isolated him, turned his stepdaughter against him, drained accounts, refused intimacy, and threatened false accusations. He didn't need to say more. The court believed him. I lost. I lost almost everything. The house is being sold. He got more of the savings. I owe attorney fees I can't cover. I might even have to help pay his if my appeal fails. Stacy's charges are still pending. The international program froze her enrollment. She's staying with a friend now. She doesn't want to go back to her dad's. She doesn't have anywhere else to go, and I have nothing left to give. She cried on the phone last night and asked me if I regretted everything. I told her I'd do it all again. That I don't care what people say. She's my daughter. That hasn't changed. But here I am. Everyone believes him. Even people who used to support me now act distant and polite, like I'm radioactive. I check my phone 10 times a day waiting for anything to change. But all I get are emails about legal deadlines and missed payments. He won. He gets to walk away looking like the steady one. The victim. The wronged husband who tried and got pushed out. And I'm left with a daughter facing criminal charges, a mountain of debt, and a reputation in ashes. Do I regret defending her? No. Do I think I handled it perfectly? Also no. But I was alone in that house long before the divorce. I was the only one who saw her as more than a problem. I did what I thought a mother was supposed to do. And now, I have nothing left. Just a key I sent in the mail and a daughter who's out of second chances. All I ever asked was for someone, just one person, to give her the grace they give themselves. And maybe, if anyone had, we wouldn't be here. But we are. Comments. Comment 1. You made sure every bridge burned with gasoline you lit yourself. You pushed your family away, trashed your husband's reputation to anyone who'd listen, and used your daughter's theft as justification for blowing up the home. And now you're shocked everyone walked. The thing that really sticks is how you kept building a case instead of building a future. You weren't trying to fix anything. You were trying to prep for war, documenting, shaping stories, dropping keys like you were staging a comeback moment. This wasn't loyalty. This was an obsession with being right. And don't even start with, everyone believes him. Maybe they just saw it play out over time and realized you were the one who stopped compromising, stopped listening, and started swinging at anything that didn't fall in line. Comment 2. Stacy's charges are a mirror of everything you refuse to deal with. She's spent years learning that someone will always absorb the fallout for her. And you made sure that someone was you. I don't doubt that you love her. But you shielded her so completely from accountability that she entered adulthood believing consequences were optional. And Rick? He didn't lose his mind when the plate broke, or when the insults came, or even when you froze him out. He left when you made it clear you'd burn down your whole life, just to keep your daughter from feeling discomfort. And honestly, a lot of people would have tapped out way earlier. You're standing in the ashes wondering why no one's rushing to save you. But the truth is, most of them already tried. They backed off when it became clear you didn't want help, you wanted loyalty. And they couldn't give that without sacrificing their own sanity. Comment 3. The minute your mom and sister cut you off, you should have known this wasn't just everyone siding with him. You started rewriting history to fit a version of yourself where you were the only person who cared. But people saw through it. You turned Stacy's problems into moral absolutes and treated anyone who didn't enable her as an enemy. And here's the part that sucks. You probably could have kept your marriage. Maybe not perfect, maybe not close, but intact if you had paused, just once, and asked yourself if love sometimes means stepping back. But you couldn't. You needed to be right. Even now, you're still framing yourself as the one who was betrayed. The court didn't fail you. Your family didn't abandon you. They just stopped playing along. Second story. I'm thinking about breaking up with my fiancé because he's embarrassed about my parents being poly. I'm sitting in my pajamas, fuming about this whole thing, and my fiancé is acting like he holds no equal footing here. I need to know I'm not crazy. When I was about 4 years old, my parents introduced me to their friend, Rose. She started spending a lot of time with us and eventually moved in. They were always very close friends, and she was very good to me. But I didn't think anything weird of it. A lot of people I knew lived with family, so I thought it was like that. When I was a preteen, they explained to me that they were all together. Not polygamy or a sister-wife situation, but Rose was in love with and dating both my parents. It was a little jarring, but I accepted it, and honestly, it didn't change much. Rose was still one of the people who helped me with homework, pitched in with dinner, taught me how to ride a bike, etc. She was there for every big moment, even the sad ones. The only thing that changed is they started kissing one another in front of me. But nothing gross, just the typical parent pecks or whatever. I knew this wasn't the norm for every family. My friends were fine with it when they found out. Not all of their parents were as understanding or accepting, but we were old enough that we could see each other outside of our homes, and it didn't impact me a whole lot socially. Twice, I had a boyfriend who found it weird, but it was revealed early on in our relationship, so it wasn't a huge heartbreak. I've been with my fiancé for the past 3 years. We've been engaged for 1. When we started dating, I explained my parents, and he was cool with it. He's hung out with them and spent holidays with us. His family lives across the country, and they haven't been able to fly out to visit much. We've only afforded 1 trip there since I started dating. The first time I was meeting them, I asked my boyfriend to tell his parents about my parents and Rose, and let me know what they said. He told me they were completely fine with it. Every time we saw each other, it never came up specifically, but I would mention Rose in passing, and no one batted an eye. So, I figured all was fine. This year, his parents were able to fly out for Thanksgiving. My fiancé and I were hosting. My parents and Rose were coming too. Again, I think not much of it. Everyone's under roof. Everything's nice and merry. Then, at some point I go to check on food, and when I come out, things are noticeably awkward. My fiancé's parents, my parents and Rose all look uncomfortable. Fiancé looks annoyed. I ask what's wrong, but no one will tell me. I awkwardly announce it's time to eat, and the meal is quiet, outside my parents and Rose engaging with me. My fiancé's parents leave for their hotel as soon as we're done eating and don't bother to stay for dessert. I'm even more confused. My mom eventually pulls me into the other room and explains that while I was checking on the food, my father and Rose were talking about a trip they're taking. My fiancé's parents looked confused, and my fiancé's mom asked, "Rose is going with you?" My mom had said, "Of course," which seemed to disturb them. My mom then said she explained they were all in a relationship together, and that even further disturbed them. She told me she was hurt. I lied that his parents were okay with them. It wouldn't have changed that they came, but they would have been more careful to not make it awkward. I told them I didn't lie at all. My fiancé told me they were okay with it. She apologized for accusing me, and I apologized for her going through that. My dad and Rose left not long after that. My fiancé and I got into a huge argument after this. He said he didn't know how to tell them, so he just didn't. I told him he's been lying to me for 2.5 years and put everyone in an uncomfortable position. I asked what his parents thought, and he had told them Rose was my aunt who lived with them to save on rent. I asked him what he expected to happen. My parents and Rose aren't making out and in people's faces, but when they're in what they assume are safe spaces, they act like they're in a relationship. He claims it's all on his parents for being weirded out and making it awkward. I said no, this is on him. He lied to everyone and made it terrible for everyone. Sure, his parents could have acted normally, and they are at fault for not recovering and trying to have a nice meal. But he's still more at fault. He just doubled down and said he didn't do anything wrong. He is now mad at me and says that I shouldn't be blaming him for this, and instead should just be mad at his parents. I am just so confused and lost and wondering if I'm going crazy by being mad at him. Comments. Commenter 1. Your fiancé is so obviously in the wrong here, for exactly the reasons you identified. There's not even any evidence his parents were embarrassed about the polyamory. They could have just as easily been embarrassed that their son had lied to them. OP. Yeah, I haven't spoken to them, so I obviously don't know their thoughts. If it was just a lot to deal with at once, or if they felt embarrassed for initially being nasty about being confused over Rose attending the vacation. Commenter 2. OP. I'd text or email and tell them you're sorry they didn't know. That you asked your fiancé to tell them your family dynamics several years ago when you first started dating, and he told you he had, and that you had no questions or issues. You didn't find out until Thanksgiving that he'd lied, and as a result there was confusion and awkwardness. You're sorry they weren't made aware of the unusual relationship before coming face to face with your parents and Rose and being embarrassed by not knowing the facts, and for the ensuing uncomfortable and awkward atmosphere. That way you're not apologizing for your parents and their choices, because it's not your responsibility, and there's nothing to apologize for, and you're putting the blame squarely where it belongs, on the guy that was too embarrassed to discuss a throuple with his parents and lied for years to cover that up. NTA. OP. This is a good idea. I'll reach out to them in the morning. Commenter 3. NTA. Your fiancé is at fault for lying. I won't blame his parents for their reaction. You are going to see similar reactions in the future if you decide to move on. Your normal won't be other people's normal, so be prepared to wait longer for the special one whose family will be comfortable with this situation. Hoping you are able to resolve this with him, and he accepts who your family are. OP. I won't be surprised if they're uncomfortable. As I said, I've dealt with this before with other people, so it's not the end of the world. My family and I have learnt to navigate that. It's just the fact that he lied and put us all in a situation that made it awkward. Commenter 4. NTA. Is he usually averse to having difficult discussions? I would not say this is 100% a deal breaker, but it would raise questions about his ability to face tough things conversations. He dropped the ball in not having the conversation with his parents, lying to you about it, and how he reacted after. OP. This is the first time I've caught him lying about something, but he does tend to avoid conflict. He is one to usually just agree with something, just to end the conversation. We've been working on it, and I've told him it's okay if we don't agree on something. He doesn't have to bend to what I or someone else want. He can have opinions too. But in general, he just says, I'm not bothered one way or another when it comes to most things, which can be frustrating, especially here. OP clarifies the relationship between her parents and Rose. OP. I said it's not polygamy, which is when they are there to serve the man. They're also not claiming to all be married to one another. It is polyamory. Editor's note. Polygamy is the practice of being married to multiple spouses, a man with multiple wives. Polyamory is a form of consensual non-monogamy that involves having multiple romantic and or sexual relationships at the same time, with the full knowledge and consent of everyone involved. Update. Hey everyone, so I'm here with an update. Before I get into how the talk with my fiancé's parents went, I want to answer some questions that a lot of people kept asking. Why didn't I tell his parents myself about my parents and Rose? This was a decent point. While I still don't believe it is my fault for what occurred, I did understand the POV that this was my situation and my family, and it's something at minimum we should have done together. I guess when it comes to situations like this, People's parents finding out about my own, usually friends, they just do it for me. It's not something I ask them to do. They usually ask me permission before our families meet. And I say yes. I thought it'd be easier if my fiancé told them before our arrival, so it wasn't just me word vomiting. Hi, nice to finally meet you. By the way, my parents are in a polycule. But, looking back, yes, I can acknowledge I should have offered to tell them as a couple. That being said, if he felt that uncomfortable doing it alone, I wish he would have told me. Do his parents think my parents and Rose are related? I feel really stupid for not thinking about this at the time. In my family, aunt is a term used loosely. It doesn't mean parent's sister. I have a lot of aunts and uncles that aren't related to my parents biologically, but were close, influential figures in my life. Thus the titles. So, when I found out they assumed Rose was an aunt, my mind just went to family friend. But Jesus Christ, realizing they probably thought this was a flowers in the attic type situation. No SHT, they freaked out. I feel dumb for not even considering this. Some have said that this situation is unusual. And even if they don't assume this is a Folgers coffee holiday commercial, it's natural that they may need a minute to process, or that they may never accept it at all. Many asked about religious or cultural reasons. His family aren't religious, nor do they come from a conservative culture. That being said, I can understand why this is odd to people, and why they may need a minute or have a hard time accepting it, even without those things. I think I just got protective of my parents and Rose in the moment, especially seeing how hurt my mum was in that moment. Yes, she's used to it. But that doesn't mean it doesn't sting when you are rejected. We're all human. At the end of the day, everyone is entitled to their own opinions. I am also entitled to my feelings. I totally understand not everyone will accept my family. That doesn't mean I'm not allowed to be hurt by it. If I can't police anyone else's feelings, that goes twofold. Someone asked, what if you never found a partner who accepted this? Or what if you never found a partner whose family did? And the truth is, I don't need their family to accept it. Just be respectful. As for a partner, I thought I had found one who was, and even if I never did, well, I'd rather have my family any day. Anyway, on to the update. As per point #2, I realized the context they were lacking may be playing a part. So, early this morning, I texted and asked if we could meet up and talk. They were all for it. I went without my fiancé, as we still weren't really talking. We met for breakfast, and the first thing I asked was for them to give their side. As most of you expected, the weirdness and judgment they were giving was because they assumed Rose was my mum's sister. They actually seemed relieved when I explained the whole story and are supportive. They want to properly re-meet my family, which I said was sweet. I didn't want to get into the whole, I don't know where your son and I stand, as that wasn't their problem. However, his mum did clarify. So, fiancé's name knew the real story this whole time and lied. I was honest and said yes. I said maybe I should have made sure he actually told them. But his dad actually interrupted and said if he promised to tell them, then it was on him to say it. They were both very disappointed in him. They actually said what a lot of you did. Even if he lied for all this time, he should have spoken up when things got awkward and smoothed out the situation. Or even grabbed me too. They felt even worse. But I told them it wasn't their fault. Given the context of the situation, I don't blame them for acting weird. The meeting ended on a positive note. We were all supposed to have lunch later on, but given everything with my fiancé, I didn't feel great about going, so I had him go alone. I told his parents ahead of time, and they understood. When my fiancé came back from the lunch, he apologized. He said he wasn't sure how to tell them and kept meaning to. He also kept hoping it would naturally come up. I pointed out it wasn't that he just didn't tell them. He actively lied. Of course, they never suspected Rose was anything more than an aunt in my stories, because that's the lie he planted. He was sincere in his apology. But then he mentioned he got a tongue thrashing from his parents, and I wonder if he would have apologized had they not told him what a jerk he was. I said I understood if he felt weird about telling them, but he should have told me. We could have navigated SHT together. Instead, he let it explode, and then did nothing to help clean it up. Nor did he take accountability until Mommy and Daddy scolded him. He made my parents and Rose look bad, made me look even worse, and most importantly, he lied to me and his parents for 2.5 years. How am I supposed to trust him again about anything? I listed some of the examples you guys gave. He got quiet and said he understood, but he wanted to rebuild the trust. I asked if he was really okay with my family dynamic, and he insisted he is. He says he loves my family and really has no issues. He just didn't know how to tell them. I said I want to believe him, but you can never fully trust a liar again. He asked what we could do to fix this. I said I needed time. He offered counseling, and I said I'd consider it. We had started planning our wedding a few weeks ago, but that has been put on hold indefinitely. I had been living with him since the engagement, but I'm back with my parents and Rose for now. I have to decide if this is something I can live with going forward. It's only been a few hours, so I genuinely have no idea if I can forgive him for this and move on. One person said, "Hopefully this'll be a funny story one day. Remember the Thanksgiving where your parents didn't know who Rose was? And I don't even know if I could ever get there. I love him. I thought he was my person. I don't want to throw it all away, but I need space. If we move forward with the relationship, we will absolutely be going to counseling." I told him even if we break up and I don't go, he needs to enter therapy for his conflict avoidance. He didn't disagree. He also called my parents and Rose to apologize. They were civil, but I know they are not happy. Fiancé's parents, however, have invited them out to a do-over dinner before they head back to the West Coast. And with my blessing, they're going. It'll be nice if they can be friends after all this. That's where we are. Everything is so fresh, and I still don't know what I want yet. Going to take the holidays to reset and rethink about a lot. Thanks for all the advice. Comments. Commenter 1. I'm glad you're hitting the brakes on things and taking time to process and work on mending, rather than either a going scorched earth and breaking up or B rug sweeping. Taking a step back and working on rebuilding is a very healthy route and hopefully will lead to a healthier relationship down the road. OP, thank you. It's eye-roll inducing how some are like, "You're throwing everything away." I'm taking a breath to think. It's only been 24 hours. It's rational to need a minute. Commenter 2. He also kept hoping it would naturally come up. He's lying about that too. He knew it would never naturally come up, because people just don't ask if their child's partner's parents are in a polycule, especially with someone they think is a relative. OP, exactly this. When did he think it would ever come up? Commenter 3. You know what's really wild is that his parents are being perfectly lovely about the polycule, which means your fiancé didn't even have the tiniest little excuse for not telling them the goddamn truth in the first place. He just didn't want to. So he lied for 2.5 years, set everyone up for a disastrous meeting, and then sat on his hands and let everyone twist in the wind. I can't imagine trusting this guy ever again. I'd say you'd always have to worry about him crumpling when the going gets tough, but he actually crumples when the going gets mildly inconvenient. Life is too long and too full of ups and downs to have a partner who doesn't even try. OP. This is what drives me crazy. He knew they would likely be cool with it, and instead, he lied for no reason. I'd have more sympathy if he had very conservative or religious parents. I'd get it. But they are the exact opposite. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.